Welcome back, everyone. We got part 4 of the Italian campaign by Napoleon by Epic History TV. I'm so glad you're with me because this is going to be an important moment. We just got word the previous episode that Napoleon's about to suffer his first major defeat in battle. Like, where he's kind of present, I'm guessing, because he's definitely lost skirmishes, and maybe he's even lost a battle, but not like where he's on the battlefield or in the presence of the battlefield. I'm guessing that's what the context is there. Mantua is surrounded, so the siege is happening. The resources and reinforcements that Napoleon's requested is nothing that he, like the numbers that he should be getting. I'm so excited to hit this play button right here. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. Let's jump into it. Lego.
An Epic History TV PMF Productions collaboration. In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age.
So this one's really about the Battle of Arcole, the bridge at Arcole. So Arcole, I'm not even sure where that is. We're about to find out.
October 1796. 6 months have passed since General Napoleon Bonaparte took command of the French army of Italy.
And let's pause for a second. 6 months. What did he do in 6 months? He basically, from Toulon, Nice, well, Toulon's a lot, way before this, but Nice was able to take out the Piedmonts, was able to capture Milan, was able to drive the Austrians up and down, just exhausting their forces, taking the Lombard region and moving them all to Mantua, Wormser's area. And now Austria's going to have to send more reinforcements to relieve Wormser, because Wormser has ultimately failed, in my opinion, at this point. I mean, sure, he reached the city. Now what? Now you're just going to get sieged.
In that time, he's led a series of brilliant operations against the Austrians and won a string of battles. Now he appears close to final victory. He's driven Austrian field forces off the plains of northern Italy, back towards the Alps, while his troops have the great fortress city of Mantua, the key to Italy, under close siege. Mantua's oversized Austrian garrison is nearing starvation and riddled with disease.
About half of his garrison's sick.
Napoleon appeals to its commander, Field Marshal von Wurmser, to surrender. The brave should be facing danger, not swamp plague, he jibes.
Will he oblige?
Wurmser is a tough old veteran.
Stubborn,
he will not
almost
yield while any glimmer of hope remains. And he knows that to the north, Austria is gathering fresh troops to march to his aid. True, many are Grentz battalions, a type of Habsburg frontier militia, poorly drilled and short of officers. But they help raise the strength of the Austrian field army to 44,000.
Wow.
And they have a new general to lead them. Feldzeugmeister, or Lieutenant General
Feldzeugmeister
Józef Alvinci.
Joseph Alvinci.
The 61-year-old Hungarian was once military tutor to Emperor Francis himself, and is regarded as diligent, sharp, and brave.
Okay.
He and his staff draw up plans for a fresh offensive to rescue Wurmser and Mantua. Alvinci and Kostanovic will lead the main column, 26,000 strong, from Friuli to Bassano, then onwards to Mantua.
Mantua.
Davidovic's corps, reinforced to 18,000, will retake Trento and push south through the Adige Valley. The two forces will link up at the earliest opportunity. Meanwhile, Wurmser, who can muster just 12,000 fit men from the Mantua garrison, will launch powerful sorties to pin down as many French units as possible.
Okay, so they got a plan.
Napoleon, by contrast, has received very few reinforcements from
3,000.
France. His weary divisions are suffering from shortages and sickness, and will be outnumbered on every front. Alvinzi begins his advance on the 22nd of October. The following day, the heavens open, drenching troops, swelling rivers, and reducing roads to mud. For the time being, Napoleon is content to observe the enemy struggle forward in such conditions, knowing the effort will exhaust his infantry and disrupt supplies. On the 2nd of November, fighting breaks out north of Trento, where Napoleon has ordered Vaubois to attack. He wants to keep Davidovich bottled up, but Vaubois is heavily outnumbered, and his attack fails. Vaubois
So they're about to just run through to Trento, and now Napoleon's gonna have to pivot immediately, it seems like.
begins pulling back to Caliano, while Massena gives up Bassano and withdraws towards Vicenza. But now
Makes sense.
Alvinzi's advance becomes strung out, slowed by the heavy rain and poor fitness of his recruits. And it is against Napoleon's nature to remain passive for so long. As the Austrians cross the Brenta, he orders Massena to attack General Liptay's division at Fontaniva, while Augereau attacks Hohenzollern at Bassano. The French launched dozens of separate assaults. But for all their poor march discipline, the Austrian recruits stand their ground and fight hard. With around 3,000 casualties on each side, the
Wow.
Second Battle of Bassano is the bloodiest day's fighting so far in
So that's a draw right there.
the Italian campaign. And a failure for Napoleon.
Or you could look at it that way too.
Hours later, he receives dire news from Vaubois. During heavy fighting at Caliano, some Croatian troops get behind the French line, triggering panic and a rout.
Oh no.
Vaubois loses nearly half his division, killed, wounded, or missing, before he can regroup at Rivoli.
That's 2 street battles right there that were not successful.
The French are falling back on all fronts. And unless Napoleon can conjure something remarkable, he seems destined to suffer a major strategic defeat.
Soldiers, I'm not satisfied with you. You abandon yourselves to panic. You were driven from positions where a handful of brave men might have stopped an army. Let it be inscribed on their colors. They are no longer part of the army of Italy. Wow. I wonder how those men felt after hearing that. What does that mean by they are no longer part of the army of Italy? Does that mean like you're not sending them home? You need them. So it might just be like a mental thing. Gotta be.
Napoleon's position is perilous, but his enemy's cautious pursuit affords him some respite. 4 whole days pass while Alvinzi and Davidovich coordinate their next moves. It's not a delay Napoleon would have tolerated if the shoe had been on the other foot. When the Austrians finally advance, it's bungled. Hohenzollern's vanguard approaches Verona to investigate reports of a French retreat.
Oh no.
This isolated division is too tempting for Napoleon to ignore.
It's a bait and
He
switch.
orders Augereau and Massena to attack. They inflict 400 casualties, but Hohenzollern escapes to a ridge near Caldiero. The next day, Napoleon orders renewed attacks. But conditions are atrocious.
Ooh.
The French
Bayonets only.
struggle uphill into driving rain and hail, their boots slipping in the mud, under fire from Austrians dug in on the ridgetop. Around noon, Colonel Dupuy's 32nd Demi Brigade finally gets onto the ridge. It looks like the French may be able to lever the Austrians out of their position.
Here they come.
But then, the Austrian army begins to arrive in force to support Hohenzollern's hard-pressed division.
I mean, I can already see how this is going to go. They're about to have to retreat immediately after they start to see these numbers. And is this the defeat? If this is a defeat, it's not that big of a deal.
The French are in danger of being outflanked on both wings. They take up new defensive positions and hold the line until darkness, when Napoleon cuts his losses and orders a retreat to Verona. It has been an unequivocal French defeat.
Oh, that's the defeat? No, that's not that bad because, I mean, in an engagement, Napoleon was fighting, you know, a battle, and then reinforcements came. If Napoleon had reinforcements, it would be even playing field. So, I mean, it was unmatched from the beginning.
Napoleon's first in battle.
So you can't really put that on Napoleon.
The following day, he writes furiously to the Directory in Paris.
Send me freaking troops,
He has
bro!
no doubt that they are to blame for his defeat.
I believe
for
that.
repeatedly failing to send reinforcements.
Obvious.
We may be on the verge of losing Italy. None of the expected help has arrived. The army of Italy, reduced to a handful of men, is worn out.
This is exactly how I would have wrote the email, too.
The heroes of Lodi, Millesimo, Castiglione, and Bassano have died for their country or are in the hospitals. The men have nothing left but their reputation and their pride.
And this kind of like starts to, I would say, it's starting to marinate within his bones about how the current people in charge do not really know how to be in charge.
We are abandoned in the depths of Italy.
It's true. It's true.
But despite his apparent despair,
Keeps on going.
Napoleon has already devised a plan to strike back.
Okay.
A breathtakingly bold move that will spawn one of the greatest of Napoleonic legends.
And that defeat meant nothing then. In the few days, we will try one last effort. If fortune smiles upon us, Mantua will be taken, and with it, Italy. Is it really though? Like, if they take Mantua, is Italy theirs? Like, why is Mantua such like a strategic location? I understand like the location and like how it sits there, and there's a huge garrison that's important to capture, but Austria could just keep sending troops towards Italy, and it's a stalemate. Mantua is just a strategic location. So that's where I'm not getting it, I guess. We'll see. One last effort.
With the Austrians converging on Verona, Napoleon decides to risk everything on a daring surprise attack. Leaving Macquart to cover Verona, he will circle south with the rest of the army, cross the Adige River, and swing north, threatening to cut Alvinci's lines of communication and capture his artillery, baggage, and supplies.
They ain't going to Mantua. What are they doing?
Such losses will force Alvinci to abandon his advance. Marching overnight, Augereau and Massena arrive undetected at Arcole.
The stealth of Napoleon is just unmatched.
Augereau's men cross the Adige on a pontoon bridge and begin moving north. But with marshland on all sides, they have to stick to the narrow, raised causeway, just 20 yards wide. And
takes
when
longer.
they reach Arcole, where they must cross the bridge to continue north, they find it held by 2 Croatian battalions. Horribly exposed on the causeway, and under heavy fire, the French troops take cover behind its reverse slope. Reinforcements are sent up, but they too are pinned down by the weight of fire from the far bank. Colonel Lannes had discharged himself from hospital that morning in order not to miss the battle.
Wow.
He now attempts to lead a charge, but is hit in the leg. The fiery Augereau refuses to accept defeat and orders another attack. But his men are exhausted and demoralized, with 3 generals wounded. The attack at Arcole has stalled.
Napoleon's not gonna like that.
When Alvinci hears gunfire from the south, he assumes the French are making a feint to divert him from his own planned attack on Verona. But then comes alarming news that the French have crossed the Adige in force and are behind his left flank. He sends 2 brigades to attack the French bridgehead and diverts Mitrovsky to reinforce Arcole.
I mean, this is a good chess match right here. What we got?
Massena's division, moving northwest to protect the flank of the advance, runs straight into the Austrians at Bionde. At first, the Austrians have the better of it. But a disastrous friendly fire incident triggers panic,
Oh no, they just shot all their own people.
and Massena drives the Austrians back up the causeway.
This sucks. For them.
Napoleon
guess.
is increasingly concerned by the hold-up at Arcole. If they cannot break through, Alvinci will have ample time to redeploy and prevent any advance. He now orders General Gueux to take 2 regiments, cross the Adige at Albaredo, and lead them up the eastern bank of the Alpone River to hit Arcole from the south. He himself rides to the bridge to try to get the attack moving.
So morale. There we go.
He finds hundreds of French troops sheltering behind the causeway, unwilling to face the Austrian fire. General Augereau grabs a standard and begins to advance. This highly romanticized depiction was painted 2 years later. "Grenadiers," he cries, "come and seek your color." In reality, none had the courage to follow him.
Wow.
Then, the commander of the Army of Italy himself draws his saber, picks up a standard, and runs forward.
Oh my.
There is withering fire all around. Several men fall wounded. His aide-de-camp, Colonel Murat, is killed.
That's his bodyguard, I think.
Another aide-de-camp, a Polish officer named Sulkowski, recalls, "The soldiers saw him, and none of them imitated him. I was
Wow.
witness to this extraordinary cowardice, and I cannot conceive it."
They're shell-shocked. They're just shell-shocked at that point.
With the French infantry refusing to follow their officers, the assault on the bridge ends in abject failure.
Bonaparte's furious.
A well-timed Austrian counterattack drives them back down the causeway. In the rout, Napoleon's horse loses its footing. He tumbles into the swamp and has to be hauled out by his aides. That evening, General Gueux launches his attack on Arcole from the south. The defenses are less formidable on this side, and his men fight their way into the village. Arcole, at last, has fallen.
Not
But
the way
that
they
night,
intended it,
Gear's
though.
men are ordered
It's like failing successfully.
to pull back. Napoleon is preparing to retreat. If, as he expects, Davidovich has continued his advance down the Adige Valley, Napoleon must withdraw now or face encirclement. His bold maneuver appears to have failed. Then, at 4 a.m., Napoleon receives a report from Rivoli that changes everything.
They held?
Not only does Vaubois still hold the town, he hasn't even been attacked yet.
They're sitting on their hands. Can't do that.
Napoleon's line of retreat remains secure for at least a few days more. It's all the reassurance he needs. He immediately cancels his retreat and issues orders to attack.
Battle of Arcole. Again.
Napoleon has lost the element of surprise, and Alvinci is now planning his own counterattack. Overnight, his troops edge forward. Provera to Belfiore di Porcile, Mitrovsky back into Arcole. Both armies are on the move before dawn. Massena sends skirmishers into the marshland.
Wow, we almost got some guerrilla warfare going on right here. Okay.
The Austrians arrive, bunched up on the causeway. They make easy targets. After a sharp fight in which an Austrian general is killed, Massena's men are driving the enemy before them. Augereau, however, cannot get close to Arcole.
Because they're kind of in the same position as the Austrians had on the causeway. They're such exposed, and you can see it's the people coming from the west right here. They were the exposed ones, but now Napoleon's the same boat. So how do you do something different? And you just saw last time in day one, cowardice, and we just saw like a humiliating defeat. So there's got to be something different that needs to happen this time.
The causeway is still swept by Austrian musket fire and canister from across the Alpone. Napoleon orders troops to cross downstream at Albaredo, but the Austrians now have 2 battalions guarding the crossing point.
They thought ahead.
French attempts to float or swim across the river come to naught. Day 2 of the battle ends in stalemate. Many soldiers have to camp amid the marshes and get what food and rest they can. Napoleon will try once more to break through, but he is running out of time.
Day 3? Okay. So day 2 is like, man, they did get a good defensive on the west on that causeway, but not a lot. Just more or less we crossed the river and we're in position now on day 2. Day 3, what we got?
Davidovich, who by now has received several urgent requests from Alvinci to advance, finally attacks on the 17th of November.
He's going to get
Vaubois'
through.
outgunned division breaks.
Yeah, he got through.
The Austrians take Rivoli and 1,000 prisoners, and nearly capture Vaubois himself. With Davidovich on the move at last, Napoleon must force a decision at Arcole or retreat. The bridge at Arcole has proved too tough to crack. So Napoleon switches
They're going behind them.
tactics. Augereau's division will cross the Alpone and attack Arcole from the south in force. A column is sent 10 miles south to cross at Legnago, and then race back up the eastern bank to support him.
Yep.
Massena
Only thing
will
makes
advance
sense.
up the causeway in support, while also protecting the left flank. That night, the French assemble a pontoon bridge over the Alpone. Augereau's division begins crossing before dawn. But at sunrise, Austrian gunners in Alberedo spot the bridge and score a hit, knocking it out of action. Only the 51st Demi Brigade is across, though it gamely begins to advance on Arcole. Massena's advance is also hamstrung by a broken pontoon bridge.
Dang, y'all can't even get the infrastructure going at this point.
To add to the crisis, the Austrians launch an attack on the fragile French bridgehead.
And now they're stuck. Those people are stuck now.
Napoleon gathers every available gun to blast the Austrians, who fall back under a withering barrage. The bridges are quickly repaired. But as the French advance, they encounter stubborn opposition on both sides of the Alponi. A bloody seesaw battle surges back and forth along the causeways. Neither side can deploy its troops, nor gain an advantage.
It's almost trench warfare.
Around 3 p.m., the French column from Legnago arrives, threatening to turn the Austrian flank.
Oh, that Arcole does not look like it's in good shape right now. I feel like they're about to abandon it.
Just as Arcole seems about to fall, the Austrians launch a ferocious counterattack across the bridge.
Here comes the cavalry.
Brigadier General Robert is killed. His troops fall back in disarray. The panic is contagious. Augereau's men lose their nerve and fall back to the bridge.
It's just cat and mouse.
The moment of crisis has arrived. But while the enemy has just used his last reserves, Napoleon can call on Massena's unengaged troops
To go to Arcole.
including the elite 32nd Demi Brigade. Their sudden counterattack turns the tide. Massena's men sweep up the causeway, taking scores of prisoners, as Augereau's division resumes.
And it just looked like it was over almost for the French, but then they just turned. It's just like whoever's on the causeway feels like is the loser almost, like when the other person is dug in. It's obvious almost.
its advance. As they approach Arcole, Napoleon arranges a small ruse de guerre. 25 of his elite escort sweep in from the east, blowing bugles to feign a mass cavalry charge.
That's so like deceit, and like he's just so good at that.
In the evening light, it's enough to scare the remaining garrison into abandoning the village. As the French continue their advance, Alvinci orders his exhausted, demoralized army to retreat east, to Montebello, to protect its lines of communication. The 3-day Battle of Arcole has been a messy, bloody affair, with no great tactical flourishes.
It was almost a draw.
Napoleon's margin of victory is narrow,
Very.
and a third of his army are casualties. But he has done enough for now.
That image from the first day, I think that's from the first day. It's like, dang. I bet he felt like he looked those people in the eyes. He remembers their eyes. It took good luck to defeat Alvinci. It's not wrong. Perseverance is what I would say too.
Alvinci may be withdrawing, but Davidovich remains a threat.
Yeah, did Davidovich, did he get the phone call that things didn't go well? I don't think he got the phone call.
The next day, Napoleon sets off at his customary pace with Massena's division to reinforce Vaubois. Augereau takes a different route to threaten the Austrians' line of retreat. The confusion that follows between Alvinci and Davidovich verges on farce. Alvinci writes to his corps commander, informing him that he will support him by resuming his advance. But Davidovich, having heard of the defeat at Arcole and now directly menaced by Napoleon, is already retreating. On receiving Alvinci's letter, however, he tries to turn his army around, leading to such chaos that he has to immediately countermand that order and resume his retreat. The end result is that both Austrian armies are soon withdrawing. And with exquisitely poor timing, gallant old Wurmser chooses this moment to launch his...
Wurmser's got Internet Explorer. He thought the plan was on the 23rd of November that everyone's going to converge on Mantua. Either that or he just picked the worst day to do it.
supporting attack from Mantua.
I mean, it's not really bad though. Like, I mean, there's not a ton of French resistance here in Mantua, but let's see.
He does at least secure some much-needed supplies, at a cost of 800 casualties.
Was it worth it though?
It has been a bruising campaign for Napoleon. By some estimates, he has lost more men than the Austrians. He has suffered his first defeat in battle, and won a costly, messy victory at Arcole.
Yeah.
But he has beaten the odds and thrown back the enemy. What's more, his heroic conduct at the bridge at Arcole will soon take on a life of its own. Artists and pamphleteers turn a slightly embellished version of events into a sensational piece of personal PR that captivates France.
It's the moment on the first day of Arcole.
With Napoleon's active encouragement, the world is witnessing the birth of the Napoleonic legend. A powerful force that will inspire loyalty and devotion for many years to come.
Wow. Wow.
For now, both armies settle into winter quarters, as December brings bitter cold and heavy snow to northern Italy.
I bet.
In Mantua, the Austrian garrison is near its limit. Starvation beckons, though Wurmser is determined to hold out to the last.
Stop it.
The Austrians will have one last chance to save the city. A final offensive to decide the outcome of the war in Italy.
I don't think it's going to work. Guys, this was part 4 of Napoleon in Italy. What did we learn? Let's just get a little bit of a view real quick before we start talking about it. Just so I want to see a lay of the land. Yeah, that's a good view right here. What persistence and perseverance by the French army, because they just looked ratted. All across from Verona to Arcole. That just did not look good for them at all. I mean, in the casualties column, they've even had more casualties overall for the Italian campaign. But the Austrians didn't fight them at Piedmont, so I wonder if that counts as much. Nevertheless, there's you still got these imposing forces on the right side in the valley and in Mantua. Like, you haven't really killed the leaders yet. They're just kind of like, pawns at this point. So it seems like if Mantua gets captured, Austria is going to retreat back to the borders of Austria, possibly. Not sure. I'm excited to see what happens, but we take it one episode at a time. Appreciate you guys watching. Please let me know what you guys thought of this particular battle. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye-bye.